The smelly stench of the recent Black Wednesday exodus shows no sign of subsiding in the near future. But there are fresh reports that WWE may in fact make a considerable U-turn and rehire one of the released masses. If Sarah Logan does come back, and that is a big if at this point, it won't be the first time this company has terminated a talent's contract, briefly mulled things over, and then hastily reversed their decision. WWE do this a lot, people. The reasons aren't always simple, and the promotion don't always deserve waves of abuse from fans for ruthlessly canning a worker. Sometimes they can point the finger of blame at wrestlers themselves for their behavior. That's all well and good until Vince McMahon realizes he wants them back on the road ASAP. Everyone here was ousted from the company sphere for a few months at best, before being welcomed back from their future endeavors like nothing had happened. I'm Gareth from What Culture Wrestling, and here are 10 wrestlers who were fired and then immediately rehired. Number 10. Emma. Bubbly NXT smiler Emma was promptly released amidst reports that she'd stolen an iPad case from Walmart in July 2014. WWE didn't hang about here. They distanced themselves from news reports, panicked over thoughts that one of their talents was in trouble with the law, and then fired Emma almost as soon as they heard. Stealing iPad accessories are a big no-no in Vinnie Mac's House of Fun. However, a few hours later, she was back in. Yes, it only took just a few short hours for WWE to realize the error of their ways. In other words, backlash from fans online was so severe and the charges were so tame, it soon came to light that Emma had simply forgotten to pay for the low price case and didn't mean to leave the store without checking it, that she was back in business before we even knew it. Emma would go on to have a largely forgettable run, one that included the botched Emmalina repackaged job in 2016-17, and she was again released in 2017. Number 9, the Iron Sheik. Despite being on totally opposite sides of the babyface heel kayfabe divide, the Iron Sheik and Jim Duggan were good pals behind the scenes and liked to ride the roads together. The problem? They got pulled over by cops in May 1987 and they were busted for drugs. So the WWF made an example of old Sheiky Baby by releasing him. But he was back by February the following year, albeit in a non-televised jobber squashing role on live events. Sheik didn't appear on television again until July 88, but he was working long before that on the house show loops and probably earning a nice paycheck for it. Weirdly, company commentators made several remarks about Sheik's decreased mobility and weight gain when he did eventually show back up on programming. In the end though, his career would never be the same after that highly publicized drug incident with Duggan. Number 8, Papa Shango. WWE officials almost seemed embarrassed by the fact they'd come up with the voodoo witch Dr. Papa Shango character. By mid-1993, they decided to drop Shango into the low-key world of the USWA and let any star power the gimmick did have evaporate. By early 1994, Papa was fed up and gone. A few months later though, reports began to surface through the Wrestling Observer that Papa Shango would return to WWF television. That didn't end up happening. Charles Wright, the man behind the gimmick, did return, although he'd be repackaged as Supreme Fighting Machine Karma instead of Shrinking Skulls. Rumours about a proposed feud between Shango and Bob Backlund proved incorrect. Wright became Karma, eventually moved on to the wildly successful Godfather persona, and never really looked back. He'd take several more sabbaticals over the years to run his strip clubs on the side. As you do. Number 7, Jim Ross. Okay, so technically Jim Ross isn't a pro wrestler, but he did headline Madison Square Garden opposite Triple H, so yeah? Also, his on-off links to WWE are amongst the most fascinating on this list. On the 11th of February 1994, JR was fired mere weeks after contracting his first bout of Bell's palsy. It seemed cruel, and it also appeared that Vince McMahon wouldn't be interested in bringing this sports-centric announcer back to his over-the-top WWF anytime soon. That all changed when McMahon was indicted by the US federal government and needed someone to replace him on TV. Quickly. Ross was that man, and he made his comeback during episodes of Raw throughout the summer months. Bizarrely, JR was fired again later in the year and then hired. Yeah, again in December. This employment merry-go-round provided the basis for JR's unwanted heel run in 1996. His relationship with the boss would also remain occasionally frosty until he finally cut ties with WWE for good and jumped to AEW in 2019. Number 6, Marty Jannetty. The period post-Rockers split from Shawn Michaels was a tumultuous one for Marty Jannetty. He was released in March 1992, brought back in October, released once more in January 93, 2023 and then won the Intercontinental title that May. The phrase long-term planning did not apply here. Vinnie Mac was flying by the seat of his pants and seemingly changing his mind on Marty weekly. As I just mentioned, Jannetty first returned to the Fed in October 92 and restarted his feud with ex-tag partner HBK. They'd finally clash on pay-per-view at the 1993 Royal Rumble more than a year after Michaels had turned heel, but that'd be another false start for Marty. Jannetty was fired a second time when rumours suggested he'd been intoxicated for the match with Shawn at the Rumble. Then, to top off this messy saga, the WWF rehired Marty and put the IC belt on him for 20 days in May. Whew, what a ride. Number 5, Syxx. During his near 2-year run in WCW, Shawn 123 Kid X-Pac Syxx Waltman was fired and then rehired almost immediately because the company needed him to do a job. On his podcast, Waltman revealed that Eric Bischoff released him after he'd pulled Ric Flair's trunks down on TV. As you do. Bischoff and WCW higher-ups had a change of heart quite quickly though. The company relented on Syxx's firing and brought him back on the spot when they realized he was supposed to lose to Diamond Dallas Page that night on Monday Nitro. According to Waltman, things happened that fast. He was gone for unprofessional conduct 1 minute, then rehired and back in the ring to put Page over the next. A few months later, Bischoff would fire Syxx for real, reportedly to send a message to his running buddies Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. Waltman would dance off back to the WWF, become X-Pac, and join D-Generation X. So things pretty much worked out for him then. Number 4, The Ultimate Warrior. The Ultimate Warrior's relationship with Vince McMahon hit the skids around SummerSlam 1991, when the wrestler demanded more money and other contractual sweeteners. Though the WWF agreed to these demands at first, McMahon hastily changed his mind and suspended Warrior after the pay-per-view. Warrior refused and decided he'd rather leave the promotion in October. That all seemed rather definitive, but it wasn't long before Warrior was running wild again at WrestleMania 8. There, Warrior sprinted down the aisle to save old foe Hulk Hogan from Sid Justice and Papa Shango. He'd been gone for only around 6 months. The whole thing was just a bit of a debacle, and it wouldn't be Warrior's last. In 1996, he got himself embroiled in more legal shenanigans with the company and pissed McMahon off yet again. It'd be a while, 2013 to be exact, before he'd be seen again after that one. Number 3, Eddie Guerrero. Sadness enveloped every fan of Eddie Guerrero's in-ring skills when it was announced that he'd be parting ways with the WWF on the 12th of November 2001. 3 days earlier, Guerrero had been arrested for driving under the influence, and the company didn't want anything to do with it. They'd already sent Eddie to rehab that May and needed him to get sober. To his credit, Guerrero didn't wallow in self-pity when he was released. Instead, he launched himself into some seriously good matches on the indie circuit, including a belter against Super Crazy on Ring of Honor's debut show, and was back in the WWF/WWE fold by April Fool's Day 2002. And thankfully that was not a prank. Guerrero, remotivated and ready to go against Rob Van Dam, rebuilt his stature as one of the best workers in the industry and became WWE Champion 2 years later in 2004. That exit from the big time in November 2001 was a blessing in disguise which Eddie undoubtedly needed. Number 2, Daniel Bryan. Choking ring announcer Justin Roberts with his own tie on live television during the height of WWE's PG era got Daniel Bryan fired in June 2010. The act was deemed too violent by Top Brass, even though it definitely added to the sudden Nexus takeover of Raw, and WWE didn't hang around. Internet darling Bryan Danielson promptly returned to his independent stomping ground. By SummerSlam in August, however, WWE realized they needed something big to help the Team WWE vs Nexus main event sing. That something big was rehiring Bryan, turning him babyface and making him the linchpin of the pay-per-view's headliner. It was a huge spot for him and fans gobbled it up. Bryan had been gone from WWE for a grand total of 65 days. It was like the company wanted to distance themselves from any negative PR and then go right back about their business as soon as they could. So that's what they did. We got D-Bry back in our lives, so it all worked out in the end. Number 1, Matt Hardy. Officially, Matt Hardy was fired for unprofessional conduct on the 11th of April 2005. He'd been very vocal on social media upon discovering that his longtime girlfriend Lita and real-life friend Edge were having an affair behind his back. WWE took the path of least resistance, or so they thought, and ditched Hardy. However, exactly 3 months later, on the 11th of July, Matt made his WWE return as a vengeful babyface out for Edge's blood. The real-life heartache of the situation was turned into a newsworthy storyline, and it was seriously hot stuff at the time. Fans loved the thought of seeing Hardy hunt Edge down and lambast Lita for her treachery. As usual, money talked. WWE treated the situation like a shoot, but made an arse of the angle by having Matt lose to Edge at SummerSlam. Though he get his win back at Unforgiven, Matt lost to Edge again on the 3rd of October episode of Raw. This pretty much meant that he lost the feud, and his girlfriend, and a friend, but at least he got his job back. Yay. And that's our list. Did we miss any other wrestlers who were fired and then hired back almost immediately? Let us know all about them in the comments section below, and do not forget to like, share, click on that subscribe button and ring the bell while you're there. Also, be sure to head on over to whatculture.com and click on some more brilliant articles just like the one this video is based on. I have been Gareth from What Culture Wrestling, sat in front of some lovely curtains, and I'm sure I'll see you very, very soon.